The stars were quiet that night, but the calm was only an illusion. In the heart of the Empire, alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed across the bridge of the massive flagship, Dominion's Pride, and officers ran in every direction, their faces pale with confusion. Sensors had detected something impossible. At first, it was thought to be a glitch. Ships of the Empire were unmatched. No enemy could appear this close without being detected months ago. Yet, as the readings grew clearer, the disbelief spread like wildfire. Something massive was coming through the void. Something moving faster than any known propulsion. Admiral Karan stared at the main display, his jaw tight. His eyes darted across the holographic screens showing the approaching object. The fleet's intelligence had no record of any ship like this. It wasn't small, like a scout or a stealth vessel. It wasn't even medium. It was enormous. Its hull shimmered strangely, reflecting the starlight in patterns that made it hard to understand its shape. "Report," Karan barked, trying to keep control. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Sarah, her voice trembling, "we have no identification. Its size, it dwarfs our largest battleships. And it's moving differently. Not like any propulsion we know. It's like it's slicing through space itself." The fleet command room fell silent. Officers exchanged fearful glances. Some whispered rumors of ancient myths, stories about humans and their legendary war machines. Stories they had laughed at for centuries. Stories that were supposed to be just tales. Karan's communicator crackled. "All ships, prepare for potential combat. Weapons ready, shields at maximum. Do not underestimate it," he commanded, though even he could feel the cold knot of fear forming in his chest. Meanwhile, across the void, on a distant human-controlled station, Captain Mara sat quietly in her command chair. Her warship, the Invictus, was unlike anything anyone else in the galaxy had ever built. Its hull was black as the void, yet it seemed alive, almost breathing. Sensors hummed softly, scanning the surrounding space with uncanny precision. Mara did not panic. She had been trained for this. Every movement, every decision had been calculated for years. She knew why she was here, and she knew her ship's power. Humans had waited silently for this moment, their fleets hidden, their weapons unknown. Now, the moment had come to remind the galaxy why humanity was never to be underestimated. Back in the Empire, panic had begun to spread. Admiral Karan watched as the massive silhouette of the human warship grew larger on every screen. Communications tried to reach it, but nothing came back. No identification, no response. Just silence. And then, a shadow of dread spread across the fleet. The humans were not responding. They were approaching. Not slowly, but at speeds that made the Empire's best pilots feel helpless. In the flagship's observation deck, Karan could see the massive outline of the vessel even with his own eyes. Its structure was sleek, but heavily armed. Turrets bristled along its sides, each one large enough to destroy entire planetary stations. Energy fields shimmered around it, shifting and pulsing like liquid light. The soldiers on the deck whispered in awe and fear. No one had ever seen anything like this. Then, without warning, the human warship stopped. The fleet expected it to attack, to fire and obliterate. But it did nothing. It floated there, silent, menacing, almost as if it were studying them. The Empire's ships formed battle lines, unsure if they should attack first or wait. Inside the Invictus, Captain Mara's voice was calm. "Stand by. Let them realize the mistake they made by underestimating us. Let them understand, human power is not a myth." A young ensign on Karan's bridge broke the silence. "Admiral, its energy signatures, they're unlike anything we've measured. It's alive." Karan clenched his fists. "Stay focused. Targeting systems online. Prepare to fire the first volley if it moves. Do not hesitate. Do not falter." But even as he spoke, doubt crept in. No one in the Empire had faced this before. Their fleets had conquered dozens of star systems, crushed resistance, and rewritten galactic order. But this was different. Something about the human warship was wrong. Too silent, too precise, too confident. The kind of confidence that came not from arrogance, but from knowing power that others could not comprehend. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The human warship remained perfectly still. Then, a ripple of energy shimmered along its hull, a faint pulse that seemed to reach out across space itself. The Empire's sensors went haywire. Shields fluctuated, weapons locked up, engines stuttered. The bridge erupted into chaos. Coran's face drained of color. Impossible. It's interfering with our systems. All of them. Mara's voice finally broke the silence across the void, calm and chilling. You've waited long enough. It is time to understand why humanity does not negotiate with weakness. The Empire froze. Ships were powerless, trapped in their own systems, unable to fire, unable to move. Fear spread like wildfire. Stories of human warships, once dismissed as myths, became terrifying reality. And in the cold darkness of space, one thought echoed in every mind: humanity had arrived. And the galaxy would never be the same. The Empire's fleet drifted helplessly in the void. Weapons were locked, engines stuttering, communications silent. Everywhere, alarms screamed, but no one could act. The Invictus, the human warship, hung like a shadow, perfectly still, almost serene, while chaos consumed the Empire. Admiral Coran paced the bridge. His uniform was spotless, but his hands trembled. He had faced impossible odds before, yet nothing had ever prepared him for this. He could see the fear in his officers' eyes, the same fear that gripped him. They had always been the hunters. Now, they were the hunted. Status report. Coran barked, his voice sharper than usual. Lieutenant Sarah's hands flew across the console. All systems are failing, Admiral. Weapons are offline. Engines won't respond. Communications are scrambled. It's as if the ship itself is controlling the battlefield. Coran's stomach sank. He had heard legends of humanity's cunning and strength, stories told in whispers on distant worlds. But stories were different from reality. Reality was terrifying. Meanwhile, inside the Invictus, Captain Mara sat calmly. Her hands rested lightly on the control console, her eyes focused on the holographic display of the Empire's fleet. She could feel the fear radiating from them across the void, not just the fear of death, but the fear of something greater, something they could not control, could not predict. Target their command ships first, Mara said, her voice soft but deadly. Let them feel our presence. But no destruction yet. We will teach them to respect humanity before we take action. Back on the Empire's flagship, the crew struggled to regain control. Officers screamed orders that could not be executed. Systems that had never failed before were shutting down in waves. A low hum filled the bridge, vibrating through the hull, a sound no one could identify. The human warship moved suddenly, though not in the way the Empire expected. It did not fire, it did not charge. Instead, it glided silently through the void, weaving between the Empire's ships with impossible precision. Every movement was calculated, every motion deliberate. Within moments, several enemy ships were trapped, immobilized, their engines and weapons useless. Impossible, whispered one young ensign, his face pale. It's like it knows what we are thinking. Coran's face turned red with rage and fear. Form a wedge. Focus fire on it. Do not let it. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing they had no way to fight. Do not let it think we are weak, he finished, though the words felt hollow. Across the Empire's communications channels, frantic messages flew. Admiral, we are trapped. Weapons offline. Shields failing. Panic spread like a virus. Even the most disciplined soldiers felt helpless. Inside the Invictus, Mara allowed herself a small smile. Humans had waited centuries to reach this moment. They had hidden their power, bided their time, and now, the galaxy would finally understand. The Empire had been arrogant, believing their dominance eternal. But power that is unseen is more terrifying than power that is flaunted. One of the Empire's ships tried to escape, firing its weapons blindly. Lasers and missiles shot toward the Invictus, but they were harmless. The human ship shimmered, and the weapons simply dissipated, melting into energy that no sensor could explain. The fleet stared in disbelief. Nothing they knew could survive against this. "Admiral!" Sarah shouted. They're not even attacking yet. They're just moving through us." Karan slammed his fist on the console. "We must regroup. Pull back. Don't engage." But even as he gave the order, his mind raced with grim thoughts. How could a single ship, even one of this size, immobilize hundreds of their finest vessels? How could humans possess such strength, such technology? In the Invictus, Mara's voice echoed calmly through the silent void. "Do not be afraid. Do not underestimate humanity. Those who do, they are already lost." The Empire's fleet tried to coordinate, tried to act as one, but the human ship moved like a ghost, slipping between them, dissecting their formation without firing a single shot. Ships were trapped in energy fields, engines frozen, weapons useless. Officers stared in disbelief, watching their proud fleet become paralyzed by a single enemy. For the first time, the Empire's soldiers realized that humanity was not just another species to conquer. Humans were a force unlike any they had ever encountered. Ancient tales, once dismissed as legends, were proving terrifyingly real. Karan's hands shook on the command rail. We cannot fight this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. We are not ready for this." And for the first time in history, the Empire felt the full weight of fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of a species that had waited in silence, growing stronger, watching, learning, and now, striking. The galaxy had been frozen in shock once before, but this time, it was only the beginning. Humanity had arrived, and the rules of war had changed forever. The Empire's fleet drifted like frightened prey in the void. The human warship, the Invictus, hung before them like a shadow of death, silent but deadly. No alarms, no firing, only the slow, deliberate approach of something they could not fight, could not predict. Fear had taken root in every heart. On the bridge of Dominion's Pride, Admiral Karan's face was pale. His officers shouted orders that could not be executed. Systems continued to fail. Shields flickered, weapons refused to respond, and engines remained stubbornly offline. Every attempt to act ended in frustration. Lieutenant Sarah stared at the screens in disbelief. "Admiral, it's studying us. It's not attacking yet, but every ship in the fleet is trapped. Even our largest destroyers cannot move." Karan slammed a fist on the console. "We must fight. Do not let a single human destroy the reputation of our empire." But the words sounded hollow, even to him. Deep down, he knew the truth. He could feel it in the back of his mind, a cold, creeping certainty. This battle was not going as they had planned. Meanwhile, aboard the Invictus, Captain Mara's calm voice filled the bridge. "Engage the first strike. Precision only. Show them our reach without causing full destruction yet. They need to understand power before they feel fear." Mara's crew moved in silence, hands gliding over consoles with practiced precision. The ship was designed for war unlike any other, fast, powerful, and terrifyingly smart. It did not merely attack. It disabled, it immobilized, it controlled. And tonight, the galaxy would witness it. A sudden ripple of energy pulsed from the Invictus. The Empire's flagship shuddered violently as if hit by an invisible hammer. Systems flickered and failed entirely. Turrets locked up mid-spin, engines refused to engage, and communications died. Panic erupted on the bridge. Officers screamed, technicians scrambled, and sensors displayed nothing but chaos. Karan tried to regain control. "Focus fire on it. Target every weapon we have left." "Admiral!" Sarah shouted. "All weapons are offline. Even the auxiliary cannons are frozen. It's It's as if the ship is controlling our systems. A low hum began to resonate through the Empire's ships. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, then stronger, vibrating through every hull, every console, every officer's bones. The human warship did not fire a single weapon, but its presence alone had rendered the Empire powerless. The Invictus moved again. This time, it was precise, gliding between the Empire's fleet like a predator among trapped prey. One by one, enemy ships found themselves locked in invisible energy cages, engines frozen, weapons unresponsive. Their panic turned to terror. On the observation deck, soldiers whispered among themselves. It's impossible. No ship should be able to do this. Coron clenched his teeth. We've underestimated humans for too long. But no more. We fight, or we die. Even as he spoke, another pulse from the Invictus swept across the fleet. This one was stronger, a wave of energy that overloaded shields on multiple ships. Sparks flew along hulls, alarms blared, and entire squadrons froze mid-flight, trapped in place. It was no longer just a battle. It was domination without a shot fired. In the Invictus control room, Mara's eyes scanned the immobilized fleet. "Let them see the difference between myth and reality," she said softly. Her voice carried no malice, only authority. Humanity had learned patience and precision. It had studied its enemies, learned their weaknesses, and now it struck, not with rage, but with cold calculation. A young ensign on Coron's bridge broke the silence, voice trembling. "Admiral, it's selecting targets. We can't predict which ship it will strike next." Coron's hand shook as he gripped the railing. "Focus on defense. Stay alive." But the Invictus made no mistake. Its first strike was surgical, precise. One massive destroyer erupted in a controlled energy burst, vaporized instantly. No screaming, no prolonged attack, only a single flash and then silence. Shock rippled across the Empire's fleet. This was not war as they knew it. This was annihilation without warning, without mercy, and without explanation. The fleet faltered. Fear became panic. Communication channels were clogged with desperate cries. "We can't hold them. They are invincible. Retreat." Coron realized it. This was not a battle they could win. Humanity had arrived, and their first strike was enough to shatter the Empire's confidence. The myth of human weakness was gone. In its place stood undeniable power, precise, deadly, and unstoppable. Across the void, the Invictus floated silently, its pulse fading, its message clear. Underestimating humans was the deadliest mistake the galaxy could make. And in that moment, every officer, soldier, and pilot of the Empire understood the truth. This was only the beginning. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Empire's fleet was in chaos. Ships drifted silently in the void, frozen by the invisible grip of the human warship. Sparks flew from engines, shields flickered, and alarms screamed endlessly. On the bridge of Dominion's Pride, Admiral Coron stared at the display, his hands trembling. He had lost control, and the realization weighed heavily on him. "Form a defensive line," Coron shouted, though his voice sounded empty even to himself. "Concentrate every functioning weapon. We will fight back." Lieutenant Sarah shook her head, eyes wide with fear. "Admiral, we don't have any functioning weapons. The Invictus, it's controlling our systems. Every ship is frozen." Coron swallowed hard. He had heard tales of human ingenuity, but he had never imagined it could reach this level. A single ship, one warship, had brought an entire fleet to its knees without firing more than a pulse of energy. The crew around him panicked. Officers barked orders that could not be executed. Pilots tried to engage thrusters, but the ships remained trapped. Across the void, the Invictus hovered, silent, like a predator watching its prey struggle helplessly. Inside the human warship, Captain Mara leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning the immobilized fleet. "Let them think they have time," she said calmly. "Patience will teach them fear more effectively than destruction." A sudden energy pulse rippled from the Invictus. The Empire's ships shook violently as shields overloaded. Console screens flickered with warnings, then went black. Officers screamed as systems failed completely. Corran's face turned pale, and for the first time, doubt replaced his anger. "We need to coordinate and escape," he shouted. "All ships, follow my command." But even as the order left his lips, he realized it was futile. The Invictus moved with precision, weaving between ships without touching them, yet every movement caused panic, confusion, and paralysis. Ships that tried to turn found their engines locked. Weapons that tried to fire jammed instantly. The Empire had never seen anything like this. "Admiral, it's predicting us," Sarah whispered. Her voice trembled. "It knows our moves before we make them." Corran gritted his teeth. He had trained for countless battles, faced enemies that seemed invincible, but nothing had prepared him for this. A single human warship had turned the Empire's might against itself. Meanwhile, Mara gave a simple command. "Select the weakest formations. Keep them trapped. Let fear spread. Do not destroy, yet." The Invictus glided effortlessly, slipping between the Empire's ships like water around stones. One by one, destroyers found themselves immobilized in shimmering energy fields. Fighter squadrons tried to break free, but engines refused to respond, and weapon systems failed mid-attack. Panic spread faster than any fire. On the bridge of Dominion's Pride, Corran slammed his fists on the console. "We cannot let this happen. We will not be humiliated by humans." Yet even as he shouted, he knew the truth. Every system, every tactic, every strategy they had ever used was useless against this single vessel. The Invictus was not just a warship, it was a weapon of terror, precision, and intelligence. One officer, pale and trembling, whispered, "Admiral, they are toying with us. They are not even attacking fully, and we are already powerless." Corran's jaw tightened. He realized that their only hope was to survive until they could understand this human technology. But how could they survive when the humans had already shown mastery over space, energy, and systems? The Invictus pulsed again, this time sending a visible shimmer across the fleet. The Empire's soldiers watched in awe and horror as their ships trembled under the invisible force. No ship dared move, no weapon dared fire. The humans were no longer just opponents, they were gods of war, and the Empire was trapped in their shadow. Mara's voice echoed across the void, calm and commanding. "Fear is a lesson. Let them understand humanity is not to be challenged. They will survive only if they respect our power." Corran stared at the display, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to fight, to resist, to escape, but every fact told him they were trapped. For the first time in history, the Empire felt true helplessness. The myths of human cunning, of their legendary warships, were no longer myths. They were reality. And as the Invictus drifted silently among the Empire's fleet, one thought burned into every officer's mind. Humanity had arrived, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The Empire's fleet was a frozen forest of metal. Ships hovered in the void, powerless and trapped. Every officer, pilot, and soldier stared at the screens, unable to comprehend the human warship before them. It did not rush. It did not fire blindly. It moved with the patience of a predator, observing, calculating, and striking only when necessary. Admiral Corran's hands trembled on the console. "We must fight back. Focus all functioning weapons, any weapons," he shouted. Lieutenant Sarah shook her head. "Admiral, there are no functioning weapons. Engines won't respond. Even our auxiliary cannons are offline." Corran's face went pale. The humans had anticipated this. They were not attacking recklessly. They were dismantling the Empire's fleet without even touching it. And now, the Empire's pride and power were collapsing under invisible force. On the bridge of the Invictus, Captain Mara's eyes scanned the Empire's formation. She saw panic spreading across their fleet. Their biggest ships were immobilized, their smaller fighters trapped. Mara's voice was calm, almost soothing. Select the most strategic targets. Disable them without destruction. Let them understand that humans strike with precision, not blind rage. A sudden wave of energy pulsed from the Invictus, invisible yet powerful. Shields on several capital ships flickered and collapsed. Engines sputtered, and consoles went dark. A cruiser attempted to flee but found itself caught in a shimmering energy cage, unable to move. Its weapons froze mid-charge. Coron slammed his fists on the railing. We cannot fight them. All systems are failing. Sarah's voice trembled. Admiral, they are picking their targets. Every move we make, they are one step ahead. We are trapped. In the void, the Invictus glided like a phantom, its movements smooth and silent. It drifted among the Empire's ships, and wherever it passed, chaos followed. Ships that tried to change formation became paralyzed. Lasers misfired, missiles exploded harmlessly in space, and engines stalled. Humanity's power was not in numbers or brute force, it was in control, precision, and intelligence. On the observation deck of Dominion's Pride, officers whispered in fear. It's like it knows our thoughts, like it can predict what we will do next. Coron clenched his teeth. He had faced impossible odds before, but never had he felt so helpless. Every strategy, every tactic, every plan had failed before they could act. And now, the human warship waited, silent, patient, and unstoppable. Then Mara gave another calm command. Target the key vessels controlling their fleet. Disable them completely. Do not destroy, yet. Let them understand the cost of underestimating humans. A bright shimmer rippled through the void as the first strategic strike took place. A heavily armed destroyer erupted in a controlled pulse of energy. It was not annihilation in the sense of fire and explosions, it was precise. Systems melted, engines died, and the ship drifted like a husk in the void. The Empire's fleet watched in horror. Their most powerful ship had been neutralized in seconds, without a single shot fired from human weapons. Fear spread like wildfire. Communications were jammed, officers argued, and soldiers panicked. Pilots froze in their cockpits, unable to act. For the first time in history, the Empire realized that it was not the humans who were attacking blindly. It was humans who controlled the battlefield entirely, without even needing to fire. Coron's mind raced. We must regroup. Focus on defensive formations. Protect the command ships. But it was too late. The Invictus moved again, slipping between capital ships like water around rocks. Energy pulses disabled key systems on 3 more vessels. The Empire's fleet was no longer a fleet, it was a collection of frozen targets, scattered and powerless in space. One young ensign whispered in terror, "Admiral, they are teaching us fear. They are not even trying to destroy us fully. And yet we are helpless." Coron felt a cold wave of dread. Humanity had arrived, not just to fight, but to demonstrate that the galaxy's old rules no longer applied. The humans had studied the Empire, learned its strengths, and exposed its weaknesses with a patience that terrified even the bravest soldiers. Mara's voice, calm and steady, echoed across the void. This is only the beginning. Humanity strikes with knowledge, precision, and strategy. Those who survive will understand. Those who do not will become history. The Empire's soldiers watched as their pride, their power, and their confidence collapsed under the silent force of a single human warship. Every officer realized the truth. Humans were not just another species. They were a force of nature, unstoppable, unpredictable, and unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And in that moment, the galaxy understood one simple, terrifying fact. Underestimating humans was the deadliest mistake any civilization could make. The Empire's fleet was in utter disarray. Ships floated helplessly in the void, their engines dead, weapons useless, and communication systems jammed. Officers shouted frantic orders that went unheeded, pilots struggled to control their vessels, and soldiers clutched their consoles in disbelief. The Invictus was no longer just a threat, it was the embodiment of their deepest fears. Admiral Coron stood rigid on the bridge of Dominion's Pride, his face pale under the flashing alarms. We cannot remain paralyzed. Prepare every functioning system. We must fight or die. Lieutenant Sarah shook her head. Admiral, there are no functioning systems left. Every weapon, every engine, every shield, all offline. The human warship, it controls us. Karan's jaw tightened. He had always prided himself on strategy, on planning, on control. But none of it mattered here. Humanity had arrived with technology and tactics the Empire could not even imagine, and it had reduced an entire fleet to helplessness. In the void, the Invictus glided silently, a dark shadow against the stars. Captain Mara's voice, calm and commanding, cut through the silence. Begin the full offensive. Strike only where necessary, but show the Empire the power of humanity. A pulse of energy spread from the human warship, far stronger than any before. The Empire's largest battleships shuddered violently. Engines sparked, weapons jammed completely, and shields collapsed under the invisible force. Sparks and sirens filled every ship, sending officers into panic. Karan gritted his teeth. Form defensive formations. Focus on protecting command ships. We cannot allow total annihilation. But the Invictus was already ahead of them. With surgical precision, it moved between the Empire's vessels, sending targeted pulses that disabled engines and systems. One by one, capital ships were immobilized, drifting helplessly in space. Fighter squadrons tried to regroup, only to find themselves trapped in shimmering energy fields that left them frozen mid-flight. On the observation deck of Dominion's Pride, young officers whispered in disbelief. It's like it's alive. It knows what we're thinking, predicting our moves before we act. Karan slammed his fists on the console. We will not be broken. Fire any weapon you can, even manually. Sarah shook her head. There is nothing left to fire, Admiral. We cannot resist. The Invictus pulsed again, this time sending an energy wave that swept across multiple ships simultaneously. Explosions erupted as systems overloaded, and entire squadrons became floating tombs of metal and fire. The Empire's fleet was falling apart faster than anyone could comprehend. Inside the human warship, Mara's eyes scanned the battlefield. Focus on the weakest links, she ordered. Do not destroy the fleet entirely, yet. Let them understand the full weight of human power. A single pulse disabled the flagship of an entire wing, leaving hundreds of soldiers trapped and helpless. Another pulse caused a cruiser to spin uncontrollably, its engines frozen, its weapons useless. Panic rippled across the Empire's fleet. They had fought countless wars, conquered entire star systems, and dominated their enemies, yet none of it mattered here. Humanity had redefined warfare entirely. Karan's hands shook on the command rail. We cannot survive this, he admitted, his voice trembling. All systems are failing. We are defenseless. Mara's voice echoed calmly, almost soothingly, across the void. Humanity does not fight blindly. We strike with knowledge, precision, and patience. Those who underestimate us will pay the price. The Empire's soldiers looked at one another, fear and disbelief etched across their faces. Ships they once believed invincible were now powerless husks drifting in space. Every officer realized that their greatest mistake was thinking humans could be underestimated, that legends and myths were only stories. Now, those legends were real, and deadly. The Invictus moved once more, a silent shadow gliding through the immobilized fleet. Karan watched helplessly as another destroyer collapsed, systems failing, crew trapped inside their own vessel. He knew that the humans were not merely attacking, they were teaching the Empire a lesson. And in that moment, one thought consumed every soldier, officer, and pilot across the Empire. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire's fleet was shattered. Ships drifted like broken toys in the void, their engines dead, weapons silent, and systems useless. Officers and soldiers clung to consoles, eyes wide with disbelief, hearts hammering with fear. The Invictus floated among them, silent, unstoppable, and terrifyingly precise. Admiral Karan stood rigid on the bridge of Dominion's Pride, his face pale and sweat running down his temple. "We cannot survive this," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. We are finished." Lieutenant Sarah shook her head. "Admiral, we are powerless. Engines are dead. Weapons are gone. The fleet, it's at their mercy." Karan's hands clenched the railing. Every instinct in him screamed to fight, to resist, to protect the Empire's honor. But every fact, every system report, every observation screamed the truth. Humanity had arrived, and the Empire had no chance. Inside the Invictus, Captain Mara's eyes scanned the fleet. She could see the terror in every ship, every officer, every soldier. "Begin the final maneuver," she said calmly. "Show them the consequences of underestimating humanity." A pulse of energy radiated from the human warship, stronger than any before. Entire squadrons froze instantly, their engines and weapons locked. Ships trembled as shields failed and systems melted. The Empire's soldiers watched helplessly as their once mighty fleet became a frozen graveyard in space. Karan tried to rally his officers. We must strike at their weak points. Focus all remaining systems." Sarah shook her head. "There are no weak points left, Admiral. The Invictus has anticipated everything. Every ship, every move, it is one step ahead." The Invictus moved silently, gliding between the Empire's vessels. A destroyer attempted to flee, firing blindly, but the human warship shimmered, and the weapons melted into nothing. Another capital ship tried to counterattack, only to have its engines shut down completely. The Empire's fleet was paralyzed, their power rendered useless. On the observation deck of Dominion's Pride, officers whispered in horror. It's not just a warship, it's a force of nature. It knows everything we do before we do it." Karan's mind raced. There was no strategy left, no formation, no plan that could save them. Humanity had studied them, learned their weaknesses, and struck with precision beyond imagination. They were witnessing history, the moment the Empire's dominance ended, not in open war, but by a force they could not comprehend. Mara's voice echoed across the void. "This is humanity. We strike with precision, intelligence, and patience. Those who underestimate us will pay the price. Those who surrender will survive." A single pulse immobilized the Empire's flagship, Dominion's Pride, leaving it helpless. Karan stared at the display in shock. Every system was down, every weapon offline. He realized there was no longer a battle to fight, only survival. He raised his voice, shaking with fear and resignation. "Communicate with the Invictus. We surrender. We acknowledge humanity's supremacy." The bridge fell silent. Officers and soldiers stared at Karan, disbelief and fear in their eyes. The Empire, once proud and unchallenged, was forced to yield to a single human warship. Mara's voice finally answered, calm and commanding. "Your surrender is accepted. Learn from this. Humanity is not to be underestimated. We protect what is ours, and we strike only when necessary. Remember this day." Across the fleet, a chilling quiet settled. Ships that had moments ago thrived on arrogance now floated powerless. Every officer, every soldier understood one truth: humanity was not just a legend. It was the dominant force of the galaxy. Karan lowered his head, exhaustion and fear written across his face. We were fools," he muttered. We underestimated them." Mara allowed herself a small smile. Humans had waited centuries for this moment. They had hidden their strength, bided their time, and now they had reminded the galaxy why no one should ever challenge humanity. The Invictus glided silently away, leaving the Empire's fleet alive, but broken, humiliated, and terrified. The stars were quiet again, but this time, the calm was real. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo for centuries. Humanity had returned, not with negotiation, not with diplomacy, but with power, precision, and a warning. Underestimating humans was the deadliest mistake any species could make. And in that silence, one thought burned in every mind across the Empire. The humans were not just warriors, they were legends made flesh, and the galaxy would never forget this day.